Where Scotty comes from, vodka is soda pop. Bones likes Tribbles better than he likes Spock. And Chekhov made a little joke. Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Seventh Rule with Sirach Lofton and Chekhov himself, Walter Koenig.
Hello.
You're going to get a lot of little jokes in this episode review, I bet you. Today we're doing a review of Star Trek, the original series, Season 2, Episode 15, The Trouble with Tribbles, written by David Gerrold, directed by Joseph Pivney. Again, boy, he directs a lot. This was December 29th, 1967. Where were you? How you guys doing today?
Pretty good. Pretty good.
Okay, so this is an iconic episode. One of the most, if not the most, talked about episode in the history of Star Trek. Deep Space Nine did an episode where we visited them in the episode Trials and Tribulations. Tribbles have been in all these extras, additional series after this. Walter, when we said we're going to do The Trouble with Tribbles, you had a pretty positive reaction. Why is that?
Well, watching it again after all these years, I was pleasantly surprised to be able to say it holds up. It's funny. It's still delightful. And you know from the first moment, before we even see Tribbles, there's an attitude among the cast that this is a certain whimsy that's going to take place here. Mm-hmm. From the very first moment, there is a sense that this is going to be fun. And it was just charming. I'm so pleased that I wasn't disappointed. It was really neat seeing everybody together, and people that I knew at the time, like Michael Pataki, who played the really bad Klingon, was a friend. Passed away unfortunately a few years ago, but a very fine actor. And I don't know how far.
Had you worked with him before? Michael Pataki, had you worked with him before?
Have I ever worked with him? We were in a theater group together.
Oh, cool.
Theater East.
Okay.
And that's how I knew him initially. Then, as the years went by, I became a ping pong associate. He had a ping pong table, and he got very intense about the ping pong.
It's called being a ping pong associate when you play ping pong with each other?
Well, you pay a monthly dues. There's a dance you have to do. Yeah.
Walter, I want to ask you, was the feeling on the set the same as what we saw on screen? Was there a lightheartedness amongst the actors and everybody on the set?
I don't know if we talked about it, but everybody was in the game. Everybody knew that this was supposed to be a fun episode, and it was. And as I say, I was so pleased to see that it holds up after all these years. There's still very funny moments in the show. I thought the scene between Scotty and Kirk was terrific.
Yes.
That was probably Scotty's best episode. And the scene between Scotty.
You mean the Scotty scene where he's confessing to Kirk about hitting the Klingon in the bar fight?
Yeah, that was funny.
Yeah, I thought so too. That was funnier than I remembered the scene being, where he's begrudgingly, giving out little bits of information. He's like, he called you this and he called you that. And then Kirk's like, Kirk starts to understand. Okay, well, I understand why you hit him. He's like, no, that's not actually when I hit him. I hit him when he insulted the ship.
Yeah.
Very cleverly written moment, David Gerrold. he wrote a good script, and script that really holds up. I keep repeating myself on that basis.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was fun. And Captain Kirk's reaction, very subtle, but very much, the unspoken comment was, "Hey, what about me?" Yeah,
Right.
don't I count? It was delightful. It was just very charming all the way around. The forest was funny and great. I if I had an exception, it would be the young who played the Klingon in disguise. I mean, they didn't have much of a disguise those days, but this guy did. I love a makeup job. I mean, he was really a Klingon.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was the character's name? Arnie Darvin. And he was Nil's assistant. And he's the one that ends up being the Klingon. I mean, that memorable. I mean, there's so many memorable moments that we've heard 1,000 times before. I think maybe the line that I remember the most and have heard repeated, or maybe I'm the one repeating it the most, is "hauled away as garbage." I don't know, when he's talking about the Enterprise. I don't know why, but that's just the line where he's just like going in deep. And apparently that worked on Scotty, but I thought that was great. But Arnie Darvin, you thought that he wasn't quite at that level. Do you think it was miscast, or what do you think, Walter? Sounds good.
This line, and I didn't write down who says it, but "it's you I take lightly." Who says that? Do you remember?
It's you I take lightly.
I remember the conversation, but I don't. It was. I think it was when a Klingon was talking about. I don't remember, but it was a Klingon.
Is that what you didn't like?
I thought it was a funny.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess. So your criticism is that you didn't like the undercover Klingon, but for what reason, though? Because you didn't have enough makeup on, or what was the reason?
I just think it was kind of, and it's a hell of a makeup if that's a Klingon. He was a young man with a shiny face, hairless.
Yeah.
Didn't look like any Klingon I ever knew.
Hey.
Okay, that's a really, really minor point.
By the way, did you guys notice that they pronounced Klingon 3 different ways in this episode? Some of them called them Klingons, like we're used to. Somebody else called them Klingons, and then a couple other people called them Klingons. Including the main Klingon, Captain Koloth, who's like, "I am a Klingon, and my Klingon people." I was like, wait, if you're a Klingon, how come you don't know how to say your own? But then you always have to remember different dialects. Maybe he's from the northern continent, and they're from this, whatever. So that, but I did you guys notice that? They kept saying it differently.
I did. I noticed it. And you would think that a script supervisor would be the one that catches that and just says, "Oh no, just some." That actually brings up a question for me, because on the Deep Space Nine scripts, Walter, in the beginning of the script, there was a pronunciation guide, and whatever words were in the script that maybe somebody wouldn't be familiar with, or even alien names like Romulan or whatever it was, they would provide a pronunciation, kind of like the dictionary does, a breakdown on how to pronounce the word. Did they do that at that time? Did you guys have pronunciation guides in the front of the scripts?
No, nothing like that.
You guys were flying blind?
Oh yeah. It was.
Okay.
I guess it was just so much fun that it wasn't going to cost anything,
It was the free will in '60s, huh?
I'm not off on this, but it's a tangent. But I just as comparison, I recently saw the Magnificent Seven. Is that what it was called?
Yeah.
And it's dated. It's really dated. That's the same period as when we were shooting Star Trek. There were things that were just silly and kind of preposterous. And there was none of that in The Trouble with Tribbles. It all felt current and is as funny today as it was then.
So do you think, Walter, if this came out as a brand new episode, if like it came out in 2025, the fans would still love it?
Yes, absolutely. I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I would, I think, in the revamp of this, if they were to come out with it in 2025, I think that they would have to up the stakes of the disaster B-plot spectrum of this script, which is the attack on the grains, for example.
What were those grains, Sirach?
Quadro, tripec, whatever.
I think it's
Triticale.
Yeah, quadrotriticale, I think is what it was.
Okay, quadrotriticale. Okay.
I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
What? Who killed the Tribbles?
That was also really funny when they were talking about that. But it ended up being Scotty that transported them over to the Klingon ship. So presumably they are now the Klingons' problem, and the Klingons were not pleased with this. I don't know if they ate them or they transported them out into space or what the Klingons did, but that's what Scotty did, was he transported the Tribbles over to the Klingon ship.
There were hundreds that were dead. Yeah. There was a scene where they said, they're dead. They're all dead. And what did they die of? I didn't.
There was the guy.
Loneliness.
Yeah, right. The guy, Arnie, whatever his name was, Darvin. He poisoned apparently some of the quadrotriticale. So that's
who was it that poisoned them?
I think it was Arvin,
the undercover Klingon.
Mm-hmm.
And the undercover Klingon was planning on poisoning the feed so that the Federation side of that planet would eat it and eventually die because it wasn't actually giving it that many nutrients. And so the plan was an essential Klingon takeover of the planet by starving everybody out on this grain. Mm-hmm. And so that was the nefarious plot that was uncovered. And and so I think they would have to just retool that a little bit. It's okay that there's something there, but there'd have to be a little bit more expanding of the threat.
I agree.
On the
I completely agree, because what they did was they just kind of told us that like as if it wasn't terribly important. It's just kind of in the background. Oh, I was just going to do this thing, whatever. But if they gave us a little bit more there, we would have had the humor and lightheartedness of the episode, plus a strong threat to actually stress you out towards the end there. I think that's the only note I would give. I do want to say or ask, Walter, did you know the actor that played Cyrano Jones?
Yes, I knew him.
I knew him personally. Can you tell us about him? Because I thought he was so freaking funny and talented.
Yeah, Stanley Adams. He was a delight off camera as well. He did impersonations. Might be considered a little antisocial.
Oh, really?
But he was very funny. Delightful guy.
Because
I thought he was good too. I thought he was good. I agree with it. His performance gave a little bit of, like he's this traveling gypsy, hustler kind of a guy, but he also had a level of charm to his portrayal of the character that made you not dislike him. Even when he was pleading to the captain at the end for his, leniency on, bringing the Tribble aboard the ship. I thought he was giving a rather convincing, like, hey, what did I do? I didn't do anything, like, I thought it was a good performance in that regard.
The line that made me really laugh, and I'm trying to find it in my notes, but that was when I was like, wow, this guy's really funny, is he started to say something. I think Spock accused him of something. And he's like, well, I don't even, what did he say? He did one of those kind of moves where he just kind of like switched mid-sentence into, what does that mean? Or what was that? And I can't find that exact line, but I was like, wow, this guy's funny. That's like just a very standard funny, way of speaking. I guess that makes him a comic rather than a comedian. But I liked him. I thought he made me laugh. He seemed like he was a talented, funny man that clearly made a living off of being a funny guy on television.
Yeah, I think he did a lot of stage work. I believe Stanley did. The one thing that this episode showed, perhaps more than any other, is that supporting actors could contribute, could add to the story.
Got mail.
Yeah, I mean, Jimmy, Michelle, Chekhov.
Yeah,
we were all up to being a valuable part of the show. Should have been taken. We should have been taken advantage of more often, I think. And these are competent actors who are more than just furniture. And this episode showed that Jimmy was delightful. Michelle was not only gorgeous but really functioned very well in her role. Yeah, and I was okay. So I'm surprised that somebody didn't say, well, we have this potential area of professionalism that we're not really using as well as we could.
Walter,
but
when
on
you...
the other hand, Leonard, Bill, and DeForest were so good in their roles that, maybe you didn't want to rock the boat. I don't know.
Walter, when you first read the script and you saw, that you had a pretty big role in this, do you remember being excited about the episode? Do you remember thinking, hey, this is going to be a fun one. It's going to be more than just I, sir. I, Captain.
Yeah, I probably did. I don't remember now, but I couldn't miss it. The first scene is Captain Koenig and Chekhov, just yeah. So I probably, and I quite possibly hoped that would recur, that we would see these supporting actors contribute as they did in this particular episode.
Yeah.
I left Star Trek in the third season. I left the show. Nobody thought it was going to be picked up anyway, so nobody really cared. I left for a month, and I did a play outside of Chicago with Jackie Coogan, Charlie Chaplin's old sidekick, and that was great fun. And I didn't miss being on the show because at that point it was really aye, sir, and I still wanted to perform in my chosen profession with some dignity of participation. So anyway, that's beside the point.
No, it makes sense, though.
I thoroughly enjoyed that episode. I enjoyed it as a performer, and I certainly enjoyed it as audience.
The big part to me, real quick, was when I saw you, Walter, in the captain's ready room or the conference room with Kirk and Spock. That felt like a big step up where it was Kirk, Spock, and Chekhov in a meeting. I was like, whoa, look at the big man on campus all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I thought you did fantastic in that scene, Walter, because I enjoyed it a lot, and it reminds me of my own ancestry and family because, you know, coming from Ethiopia, having an Ethiopian background, one of the things that we always do as Ethiopians is mention what comes from Ethiopia, right? So
Yes.
we'll say, you know, coffee was invented in Ethiopia. You know, we discovered coffee, right? You like coffee,
You're
right?
welcome, Starbucks.
Exactly. And so it's kind of a cultural pride, you know, thing for a lot of people who immigrate from places. They like to talk about the proud things about their heritage. And so when you came on there and you were talking about, you know, and now you've taken that to the next level with your character, which is, you know, we invented that, right? And basically everything that ever happened first happened in Russia. And so I love how you played that note in the beginning because that offered a great back and forth between you and Spock and Kirk when you say a famous Russian astronomer mapped it first, and they were like, no, actually, it was John Burke. And then when you say, oh, Royal Academy, like, oh, okay, never mind, like, excuse me, the Royal Academy. So, very great performances. Had me laughing. I thought it was great. Um, and then you go on to talk about Peter the Great, and I'm like, oh, here we go. So it's just great, you know. I loved your performance in this. I was very pleased to see you opening this episode. This is one of the classic great episodes, and here you are, you know, with the 2 stars of the episode, and it just you made that scene run. So kudos to you, Walter.
I love the moment when I say close enough to smell them. Spock, he solemnly says, "No, you cannot smell in space," or whatever the hell it was. I thought it was great.
Mm-hmm.
It was fantastic. And then cut to the later scene. Again, you hit that one out the park. The whole, I thought it was great that you were about to stand up for Kirk. So I thought, so again, great writing by David Gerald. You know, here he is. He sets you up in the beginning with Kirk and Spock in the opening scene. Flash forward to the bar scene, and now you're standing up for your captain, and you're ready to fight. So I thought that's great writing. You know, it shows you the intimacy of you and the closeness you have with the captain and Spock. And then we go later on in that same episode where you're willing to, defend his honor essentially. And I thought that stood up well for you. I was surprised that Kirk didn't mention it more. I thought Kirk would have accentuated the point to Scotty that, so you're saying Chekhov stood up for me and you didn't, one of those just doubling down on the obvious.
Yeah. I guess it was just assumed that I had great loyalty to the captain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It also showed you kind of like, to me, as something I hadn't noticed about your character, or maybe it hadn't been shown before, but it almost showed to me that, Chekhov's kind of a hothead too. He's not just like some submissive guy that sits there and pushes buttons. Don't push his buttons, or don't push Chekhov's buttons, because he's kind of a hothead. So it was interesting to see it almost was like you weren't just standing up. Go ahead.
You know that the Tribbles were inanimate. Mm-hmm. They were little manufactured fuzzballs. The ones that moved, that you actually saw right there, they had motors inside, toy motors, so that they could move across a desk or a table or something. and made a sound. They had to cut out the sound.
They should have kept that. That's very cute.
Yeah, right.
Well, actually, Walter, I had some questions about the Tribbles.
Yeah, me too.
However,
Me too.
we got to jump to our break, so we'll get those on the other side. Everybody, stick around. We'll be right back on the 7th Rule. Well, hi there, everybody. Welcome back to the 7th Rule with Sirach Lofton and Walter Koenig. All right, here are the trivioids of the week, you guys. Can you believe it? Chekhov makes a little joke. Sherman's planet is claimed by both the Klingons and the Federation. Mr. Barris is the Federation undersecretary in charge of agricultural affairs in this quadrant, of course. Quadrotriticale is a high-yield grain. Chekhov wants to make sure the Tribbles don't bite. Scotty loves to relax with technical journals. 50% of a Tribble's metabolism is geared for procreation. It's geared for procreation. Where Scotty comes from, vodka is soda pop. A Regulan bloodworm is soft and shapeless. You better not insult the Enterprise in front of Montgomery Scott. Bones like Tribbles better than he likes Spock. And Tribbles don't like Klingons. Okay, so here's my first question to you regarding the Tribbles, Mr. Walter Koenig, since they are very popular Star Trek animals, aliens, I don't know. I wanted to know, when they had so many Tribbles, first of all, I just thought, like, did that blow the entire season's production department budget? Because they made so many of them, and I can't, and they didn't look like they're easy to make. It's not like a wood block. Like, you know, there's obviously, you know, they're different colors, they're different sizes. There's a lot of, like, all joking aside, it looked like it was a lot of work. Do you know anything about that?
I do not.
I knew you were going to say no.
If you had asked me after shooting the episode, how many Tribbles do we use? I would have said 30 or 40. You know, I didn't know. I didn't know what was going on. I wasn't in the scene where all the Tribbles fall on Captain Kirk's head. By the way, I remember when they opened that chamber, that vault, and all the Tribbles fell down. I remember that one of them bounced off his head, but I didn't see that in the episode.
I think we saw it.
You saw it?
I saw one. Yeah, I saw it.
It seems like there was a PA up there having way too much fun throwing Tribbles at Shatner's head while Shatner's trying to deliver lines.
Yes.
A great reaction. He had a great reaction when it bounced off his head.
You know, my Tribble question is, did you take any Tribbles with you? Was anybody like eager or taking them with you? Did they give them away? Were they passing them out like footballs? Like, what was the Tribble?
Sirach, enough years have passed that I can confess, and it is a matter of confession, because I was booked and spent 2 nights in the Hollywood jail as a consequence of stealing and selling illegal
contraband Tribbles.
Yes. Yes, the famous Tribble scandal that Walter was involved in. No, I really thought it was great. You know who I really didn't expect to see in this episode, and I didn't know, obviously I haven't seen this episode, but I didn't know how large a part everybody played in this episode. And I didn't realize that Nichelle Nichols had a major role in this episode. And I thought she was lovely. And, you know, besides just being beautiful, she's so sweet. She's so, you know, there's an innocence to her as when she's approaching the Tribble and kind of discovering it. I thought she was fantastic in this episode. I just thought, you know, she made the Tribble acceptable and kind of welcoming. She was the the reason why I had so much love for it was based on her introduction of it, as opposed to the salesman or the bartender. They didn't project the kind of love that I had for it. It came from Nichelle Nichols obsessing and adoring over it and talking about how cute it was. I think she's the one that really sold the Tribble for me, her character.
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, she had that line. She's like, "It's purring." She sweetened it and she made it feel like, like it's like a little kitty cat or something. So I thought that was great. So yeah, Nichelle Nichols was great in this episode as well. That bar
guy,
fight. What was that?
the mean guy, William Shallert. He had done a sitcom playing the father in a sitcom prior to either prior to our show or after. I think it was prior. It wasn't. I don't think it was Gidget, but it was something like that. So he had a background in comical role, in lighthearted roles.
Of course, when Sirach was talking about the Tribbles, my first thought was if Sirach or me or most other people were on that set, those Tribbles would be footballs in between takes. Like, how could they not? And the art department would be chasing you down and yell, "They're not toys!" But I could totally picture people just be like throwing Tribbles around. There's so many of them; they're everywhere. But here's a piece of trivia for you, Sirach Lofton. Do you know? I mean, you do know, but did you realize that one of these characters did come back in Deep Space Nine, and not in the Trials and Tribulations? It was the Klingon captain, Captain Koloth, came back. The character did, as well as the actor that played him, who was, what was his name? Right now, there's some Star Trek fans yelling at their screens. They're like, William Campbell. William Campbell came back, reprised his role as Captain Koloth. Sirach, you'll remember here. This is what he looks like 30 years later on Deep Space Nine, reprising his role. Now, he was an updated version of the Klingons, but this is the same actor playing the same character, Koloth. And Sirach, you'll remember the episode when Dax meets up. There's like the three Klingon old friends. There was Kor, Kal, and Koloth, or something like that. And they were friends with Jadzia, and they went to go fight this final battle, and they all kind of died, or 2 out of 3, something like that. So that was them. All 3 of those Klingons in that episode were characters that were introduced in the original series, and they were portrayed by the actors that played them. So they actually were all 3 reprising their roles 30 years later in Deep Space Nine. This was one of them. So it was really cool that we got to see this. That was good old Koloth, one of Jadzia Dax's good friends.
Wow. And I think also 3 of the Tribbles from the original episode were reprised in the Deep Space Nine remake. So that's pretty amazing.
Wow, they got quite the life expectancy.
That's great acting. Great acting.
Those Tribbles were so old, Sirach, that they were only used in that episode that you're talking about with the sanction of Medicare. The
episode was called Blood Oath. I just looked it up. It was called Blood Oath.
Oh yeah, I remember that episode. It was a famous episode.
Incidental event in our show. The other guy in the bar who sat with Jimmy and I, if you recall, there was a third guy.
Freeman. His name was Freeman. And he did have one line when Kirk was dressing them down. He said, "Freeman, who started the fight?" He says, "I don't know, sir." And he goes, "You don't know, sir." Great.
But he was there because he was a stuntman. And when they had the fight, he was the one that was doing most of the fighting.
He was pretty good. He was a lot of times we see these fight scenes and we kind of giggle a little bit, but you could tell why he was there. He was a legitimate stunt guy.
Yeah, I thought the fights were good. Sometimes they're a little corny to watch, but this one was actually a good old fashioned bar fight, and I enjoyed it a little bit. And then they had the little segue too with the guy, stealing the wine while the fight's going on.
That was so funny.
So it was pretty good. It's like help yourself to the bar when nobody's looking. So I thought that was fun too. This episode, it was fun. It doesn't always have to be serious, and that's one thing about Star Trek that I think when they do a good job of striking a balance of science fiction and also funness. Sometimes it's too comical, and you're thinking, oh, they just went too far on the comedy side. But this one was, subject matter wise, because it's the Tribbles, because it was a furry, fuzzy little animal that you like. I thought it played well. Spock got to have a moment where he felt a little awkward. He was like, "It seems that the Vulcan, it seems like it likes me or something. All right, and I'm immune to its, lovability or something."
It's trilling, I think they called it.
Yeah. So all of that was good. I just had fun. I watched the episode. I knew it was going to be light. It had me really, the only thing I think was a little over the top for me was the scientist or whoever it was that was in charge of the grain that was being a little obnoxious about the Klingons are here and this and that. It was a little over the top to me. Unless it was met with some serious threat, the threat didn't seem to match the level of outrage that he was expressing.
Walter, can I ask you this question? We've been bombarding you with questions, but that's because people have been wanting to ask you these questions and asking you these questions at conventions for 60 years. But this is just such an iconic episode. David Gerald, he's still around. He still goes to conventions. He still answers these questions. He's still active on social media. Did you ever meet him? Did you ever have any words with him about this episode? Anything like that?
More than having words about this episode, I've had words with him.
Nice.
Before I knew him well, he was, he was kind of like a prodigy. He was so young when he was doing the episode, and he made the mistake of saying that the bit player Walter Koenig infuriated me, and I told him I'd kill him if I ever heard it again. I ran into him at a point, and he didn't seem to understand that was an enormous insult.
Yeah,
and maybe it wasn't, but to me it was. And it was at a party at Harlan Ellison's house, and I cornered him, and he was totally surprised by my very emotional reaction. But I got to know him over the years, and more than that, I worked for him. He did a series called Land of the Lost.
Yes,
and he hired me to write one of the episodes. And if I may say so, on the basis of other people's comments, it was one of the most accomplished episodes that they had on Land of the Lost. So I didn't know that at the time, but I'm pleased that it worked out. So anyway, yes, yeah. I saw David. David now lives, I think, either in Vermont or upstate New York. And I was at a convention in Ticonderoga, and he was there, and he looked good, and he seems to be happy. Yeah, we got along after that particular moment. We got along quite well, and he tried to get me on he and Dorothy both tried to get me on as a writer on Next Generation.
No way, really?
Yeah, they
because you wrote an episode for the animated series too. So there was a precedent here. So you'd written for Land of the Lost, you'd written for the animated series.
Yeah.
How did this go?
And so I pitched some stories to them, and they loved them. They loved the stories. You know, no matter the friendship that's involved, and say, well, you were friends, so they liked them. It's their ass on the line if the story isn't good, and they've supported the writer. So my sense was they really liked the stories. They thought they were worth doing. And I bring this all up because the other producer, who I didn't know, I hope I'm not getting my series confused. It's possible. Anyway, he also very much liked them. He said, I pitched 2 or 3 stories. He said, we're going to do one of the 3 for sure. And so I went home saying, that's great. And then I got a call. Gene wants to meet with you. So I said, okay. So I went back to the studio. Gene was very pleasant. We walked the lot. We sat down in the cafeteria. And I pitched the stories again. I finished one. And he went for his drink that he had. He sat a moment and then said, how do we get Geordie?
Yeah.
I can't think of his name. Geordie LaForge.
Yeah, that's right. Geordie LaForge. Yeah, you got it.
Yeah.
How do we get no, strike that. It wasn't Geordie. It was Data. I saw him.
Data. Got it.
Yeah.
How do we get him to the planet? There's a million ways you can get him to the planet. You can be checking out the people. There's an insurrection. There's 100 things, ways of doing it. And he says, And then he asked me to tell the second story. And by now I knew it was never going to happen. It just wasn't going to happen. So that was the end of that. But both Dorothy and David Gerald and this other producer were very, very generous in their approbation.
Boy, that would have been awesome, though, if you kind of dodged a bullet not writing in the first and second season of Next Generation. It was pretty helter-skelter there for a while. I do want to point out, though, very quickly, speaking of Land of the Lost, the 2 lead actors of Land of the Lost go to STLV every year in the vendor's room. I don't know if you ever see them. Kathy and Wesley, the 2 lead actors from Land of the Lost. If you see them, you should say hi. Be like, I wrote for you 50 years ago.
And the truth, I didn't care much for either of their performances.
Oh no! Okay, then don't go say hi.
Yeah, never mind. Strike that one.
That's hilarious.
But that's funny you say that, because you just mentioned that it was one of the most acclaimed episodes of the show. That's interesting. How the episode you wrote of Land of the Lost, you said was one of the better episodes that people say.
But I didn't know it. They brought back the character that I created, and was
cool.
At least one episode. Yeah. So,
okay.
And working for David was fun. He was a good producer, so I had a good time. I wasn't that fond of the series, but
I thought the space station K7 looked really cool. The exterior shots of the space station K7. I think those were maybe remastered or something, because I was like, that looks way too good for 60 years ago. That's just one point that I noticed at the very beginning. It opens up and you see the outside of the space station. I was like, wow, that can't be right. That looks really good. But we are running low on time already. God, we could talk about this episode forever. But Cirroc Lofton, who gets the home run of today's episode?
You know, performance-wise, I liked Walter's performance. I liked
Yeah.
Chekhov the most. Made me laugh, and I thought that you had the real standout performance in this episode. Um, and then I want to also give the home run to David Gerald. I think that coming up with an idea like this that ends up becoming, part of the canon and having long lasting effects and staying relevant all of these years. That's a great idea by him, and it worked well. And so I would give the two, Walter and David.
Well, Walter, you're a baseball guy. You like the Yankees. You like the G-men. Just kidding. That's
Lost
me.
18-2 last.
That's ruthless. My guys have been scoring 0 or 1 points for like the last 10 games, so I know how you feel. But the question is, who gets the home run of today's episode?
Well, I hadn't thought about David. It was very well done, very well created and executed episode. But because he may not get another chance, I want to give it to Jimmy Doohan. I thought he had a significant role, and he played it very well. I was thoroughly impressed with his work. The scene that he has with the Klingon in the cafeteria, there was so much built-in anger, and he was ready to, do him in. I thought that was very, very well executed.
Mm-hmm. Sirach, Scotty in this episode and in other episodes does remind me a little bit of Chief O'Brien. I feel like Chief O'Brien in Deep Space Nine is kind of derived a little bit from Scotty, not just because of, they're, British and they have drink scotch, but also because, they got a little bit of a temper, they're kind of tough guys, that they're not fighters, they're engineers, but they both kind of have like that background. I'll tell you, home runs of the episode, for me, it is Chekhov and Uhura, because they rarely get to be, part of the leads, part of the main story, and they both did very well. They did a lot with what they had. I thought it was great. Also, honorable mention, yes, to Scotty, Cyrano Jones. There's so many great performances, David Gerald, but for me, it's Uhura and Chekhov. I wrote a lot of notes about Chekhov, I'll have you know. There was an
and I want to add to that. Yeah, I want to add just really quickly to that. I loved hearing that Chekhov was going to hang out and go shopping with Uhura. I don't know why I love that so much, but that little nugget right there let me know how good friends you are, and I thought that was a great for me. I don't know why I love that line, but it just resonated with me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we ever had a scene for the two of us ever again.
Wow.
That was more than a liner.
Okay.
Wow.
So that was fun. Yeah.
Yeah, it gives us just a tiny bit more to chew on with regards to those characters. Gives us a little bit more to know about. Speaking of things we like to chew on and people that like to go shopping, here are some people that love shopping. Their names are Dr. Anne-Marie Siegel, Eve England out in Wales, Yvette Blackman, Tom, TJ Jackson Bay out in Missouri, Titus Muller, Dr. Mohammed Noor, Anil O. Palat, Joe Balsarati, Mike Gu, Dr. Stephanie Baker, Carrie Schwent, Faith Howell, Edward Foltz, a.k.a. Crewman Guy, the Matt Boardman, Chris McGee, Jake Barrett, Henry Unger, Allison Leach Hyde, Julie Manasfi, Jed Thompson, Dr. Susan V. Gruner, Glenn Iverson, Dave Gregory, Chris Sternett, Greg K. Wickstrom, Cassandra G., Chuck A., Chris Garris, Mark Zutkoff, Lamaya Lancaster, Sean Mouch, Amiram, Mizne, and of course, Jason M. Oken. All right, everybody, stick around. We've got the free-for-all up next. We will be right back on The Seventh Rule.
It's hilarious.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to The Seventh Rule with Sirach Lofton.
Hello.
And Melissa Longo.
Hello.
It's the free-for-all, of course. Jason M. Oken is here.
Everybody.
Thank goodness. TJ Jackson
Bubbles.
Bay's feeling a little fiery today. Allison Leach Hyde is here as well. Always cool stuff in her background. Mark Zutkoff has 3 cool pictures. Maybe we'll learn something about each. Carrie Schwent is buried in colorful Tribbles. She has her I Love Tribbles sweater too. That's cool.
Yep.
Chuck A is smiling knowingly. It's one of his favorite episodes ever. And Chris McGee has an awesome 7th Rule shirt. Which version is that? Cool. All right. Jake Sisko guesses the IMDb score.
I'm going to guess that this was probably like an 8.9.
Wow. Does anybody else have any guesses as to what this episode got on IMDb as an average? It's not even an average. They have like a weighted average now. IMDb is weird. Anyway, that doesn't already know.
9.
9.5.
I'll guess
8.7.
9.1.
We're all over the place on this one. Okay, the answer, of course, is Melissa knows it.
8.7. Chris McGee got it.
Oh.
I would love to take credit for that, but I said 9.5.
Yeah, he did. And someone else said 9.
Somebody said 8.7. Oh,
Bubbles.
Jason, sorry.
Jason.
Oh no, what have I done?
Sorry.
Great job.
That's all right. I don't need the credit.
How did you remember that from already reading about it and knowing it was 8.7? No, I'm just kidding. That's a good guess. Awesome. Good guess by Sirach, too. Do we have any some kinds of or some sorts of in this one?
I heard one of them. Cyrano Jones, when he was pleading with Kirk to get out of prison time, said, "Captain Kirk, friend Kirk, surely we can come to some sort of mutual understanding."
Nice. Very good one. Very good. That was a hidden one. What about non-appearance mentions? Was Sulu mentioned? Was anybody mentioned? I didn't catch it either. Way fewer non-appearance mentions in the original series, it seems. Because I guess they don't have many people to mention yet because they just started the series. All right, Melissa Longo, please get us started off on the right track by telling us what you thought of this particular episode.
While I was watching it twice, I was like, what are they doing with this episode? I couldn't. No, I'm just kidding. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Damn. You had me fooled right there. I was like,
No, I thoroughly enjoyed this episode, and it had me giggling on both watches.
Wow.
Yeah, because it was funny. It was, it was a fun little funny episode, and I understand why it's so popular. Because Tribbles are really cute. I was there with Uhura when she was like, "Oh, it's adorable." It was great. But even from the opening teaser, when Chekhov is telling his jokes, it was great. It was great to see Chekhov and Uhura and Scotty get some love and attention in the storytelling. I really enjoyed that. We got some character development for Scotty in that he loves to read technical manuals, and his feathers don't get ruffled if the captain is insulted, but you insult the Enterprise. You better watch out. You better watch out. It was great. Yeah, overall, I thought it was just a really enjoyable episode. I really enjoyed Kirk in this episode, too. I think he did really well playing the straight man. And and his delivery, there's always a sense, a tone, or a sense of honesty in his deliveries. So, and they're not usual. They're not normal line deliveries that you would expect, which may be why he gets made fun of so often. But I think he did really well, and I believed him in this. And I really liked when he's talking to Scotty after Scotty has confessed about starting the fight. But just because he listens, you can see him listening, and there's something going on in his brain when he's talking. He's not just phoning it in, which is great.
Mm-hmm. Great stuff. Melissa, one quick question. You said you watched it twice, you laughed both times. The second time, was there something you laughed at that you didn't laugh at the first time?
Was there something? Possibly.
We'll take it.
I think I don't know. And I have to mention, that I may like it even more because I did watch Deep Space Nine's The Trouble with Tribbles, or wait,
Trials and Tribulations.
Trials and Tribulations.
Episode 200.
Was it 200? Cool.
Because Deep Space Nine did a really good job bringing us back to that time. And the colors, oh my gosh, the colors. There's so much to say about this episode. You guys go. It's your turn. I don't want to take up everyone's turn, but it's a fun episode.
Thanks very much, Melissa Longo. Jason M. Oken, she met you. Go ahead.
Oh, of course. Melissa, you're absolutely right. I mean, how much time do we have? This perhaps, along with The City and the Edge of Forever, one of the most written about and talked about episodes of Star Trek altogether. The books written about it. So, again, we can talk about this for a long time. And I think, overall, it strikes a very, very nice balance with drama and comedy. I think it reaches the level of comedy where it should be. It comes on the heels of I Mud. It was shot right after I Mud, which I think went overboard quite a bit with its humor. So I think it reached the right point here, and it's a little too bad that Walter couldn't join us for this. But there, again, a lot of things have been said about it, and there are a couple sort of jumped out at me. And Melissa, you said certainly Walter had some nice scenes in it. Nichelle had some nice scenes in it, and attention was paid to give these supporting characters a little bit more to do. But kind of going back to Walter, and I know the story, typically is that, because George Takei was absent for a good part of the second season, a lot of the lines that were meant for Sulu went to Chekhov. Not quite the same here, although the episode, I think, started shooting the day after George went on sabbatical or on leave to shoot the Green Berets with John Wayne. Originally, there was this character called Dougherty, who was supposed to be in the teaser and in the fight. And Bob Justman said, why don't we give the lines to Chekhov? So a lot of that ended up because of Bob Justman. And there's a little anecdote that I'll tell that's a little bit different from all of this. When David Gerrold was writing this, apparently he was using his own typewriter that was a little bit different from the way the scripts were typed up back, in the day. When he showed up, when the first draft of the script was printed, it was about 20 pages too long. So he needed to go back and cut a lot. So he went to the set and he was, chopping and doing all that kind of stuff. And he had a conversation with D. Kelly. And then after a while, Walter supposedly comes up and says, what are you doing? He says, well, I have to cut my script. And he says, well, anything of mine. And David Gerrold apparently couldn't resist and said, all of it. And supposedly Walter wasn't too pleased, and it all ended up being well. But again, all in good fun. The episode is fun. The history behind it is fun. There's a lot more to say here, and I'll save that for later.
Wow, teaser.
Do it now. Do it. No, save it for later. Thank you very much, Jason M. Oken. All right, TJ Jackson Bay is out in Missouri. He loves this episode too, maybe.
I do. It definitely is a fun one. And, I enjoy watching it because I feel like, we get a little bit of Klingon lore there with Captain Koloth. And, since I've watched Deep Space Nine, when I'm watching this episode, I can't help but picture in my mind the scenes where I know the Defiant crew is over there.
Yes.
And so they're the non-appearance, non-mentions in this episode for me. But it's interesting, to kind of see, the Klingon story develop and see, how they behave under the Organian peace treaty, that they're trying, quote unquote, trying to play by the rules, but they're still roguish, and still doing the stuff to be antagonistic, as is their role in the show. But we also get to see kind of how they have a little fun, poking at the Enterprise crew. And so that is one of my favorite scenes. I think I ran it back a couple of times to hear him say that the Enterprise should be hauled away as garbage. Because he delivered that. He delivered his lines so well in that scene. As he's kind of prancing around the bar and poking, like he knows that he's getting at him because Chekhov keeps jumping up, but Scotty is the one that ends up, doing the deed. So I think that scene is hilarious. It's so well played. But it also shows this kind of idea of the Klingons trying to be cordial. We see the Klingons, kind of joking and laughing. So, when Worf comes years later and says, Klingons don't laugh, we already know that that's not true. Because, we see that, they're just kind of sitting around having a good time. But we also know that they're up to something. So, because they're the Klingons, they're the bad guys. So, there's that. I thought, seeing Cyrano Jones' character was also interesting. Bubbles mentioned I Mud, and he kind of gives some Harry Mudd, vibes. He's this kind of roguish character that he's not necessarily malevolent or bad, but he also isn't quote unquote all good. Like he will get you if he can, and so kind of seeing how they deal with the Tribble situation and how he kind of almost, it's not a court, but he kind of almost takes a plea bargain to clean up his mess rather than go to jail. So I thought that was some interesting things as well. But the thing that stood out the most to me in this watch was the line that Captain Kirk delivers towards the end of the episode when he's talking to her, and the Tribbles are all over the place at this point. Lieutenant Uhura is defending, the Tribbles and saying, but they give us love. And Captain Kirk says, too much of anything, Lieutenant, even love, isn't necessarily a good thing. And that made me stop and ponder for a minute about, how as a society, it does seem that we try to just take all of something that we can get, whether that's money or love or influence or whatever it is. We can just never seem to get enough of it. And so, it's just something to kind of stop and think about, how we can, maybe be, more balanced and sharing and caring and loving in that way. So that's all. I got a lot of things left unsaid, so I'll leave this here now.
Excellent. Thank you so much. TJ, Jackson Bay out in Missouri. All right, Allison, Leech Hyde is here. Finally, the wait is over. What do you think of this one?
I love this one. I've loved this one since I was a kid because it's fun and funny. And, our crew, yes, Sulu is not in this episode, but the rest of our crew all has great things to do and say. Nichelle is particularly wonderful in this episode. Just the joy on her face that is expressed whenever she's holding the Tribble that is just purring and cooing at her is just beautiful. Like the woman radiates light and love just straight out of her face into your living room where you're watching. So I love her in this one, especially when she says the line, "I couldn't. Could I?" When she's offered, like I melted. Like I know why he wants to give her stuff. I want to give her stuff. So love her in this, and I also love Scotty in this because yes, you can insult Kirk, you insult that his ship because the Enterprise is Scotty's ship. Like, and so he's like, that's a no-go. And the scene with him and Kirk after they all beam back and get in trouble, and he's got the black eye and And Chekhov's got the big old bruise on his cheek, and he's explaining what happened, and just the look on Kirk's face is like, you weren't defending me. You defended the ship. I thought it was a great scene between the two of them, and highly enjoyed that. And I have to say, Spock had some of the best technobabble, which wasn't true technobabble, but I wrote down a line from him that was just hilarious. But it's 3 lines in my notes, so I don't know if I really want to say it, but I loved it. I'm like, this script is so great. So great script, fun story. All of our characters get to do stuff and shine in kind of either their personally who they are or in their job, because Bones is great trying to figure out the entire episode, how do tribbles work? Like, how does this ball of fur do this? And so wonderful episode. And probably my favorite line the short favorite line of mine that comes from Kirk is at the end. And that is, on the contrary, sir, I think of this project as very important. It is you I take lightly.
That's the line.
I love that line. I'm like, this is how he feels about this whole thing. Like, why is this the situation I'm in? So I love this episode. And a fun little tidbit I learned on Memory Alpha is that William Campbell, who played Koloff, stole like a bag full of Tribbles from the set and took it to the neighborhood kids. And I think that is the sweetest thing. So that's where I'll end it. Love the episode.
Great stuff. Thanks very much, Allison. You answered like 2 of our questions from our review. One was we were trying to figure out who the I take you lightly line came from or where it was delivered from. And Sirach also asked if Walter stole a bunch of Tribbles. William Campbell.
Walter did, but William Campbell did. So
William Campbell did. Okay.
They were finding, one more little tidbit. They were finding Tribbles for months on the set afterwards because so he probably would have, and they never would have noticed.
That's funny.
So hopefully Walter did.
Thanks very much, Allison Leach Hyde. Mark Zutkoff. I bet you've seen this episode a few times. What do you think of it?
Well, it's one of 3 second season episodes featuring comedy, and it's the one that's the most out and out funny. Given that the famous quote says drama is easy, comedy is hard, it's even harder to believe this was writer David Gerrold's first professional sale. Now, I've read both of Gerrold's books on Star Trek, one of which contains the entire script of the episode annotated with his observations. Gerrold worked closely with producer Gene L. Kuhn on the script, who rewrote several sections of it. As Melissa said, the teaser is a great showcase for Chekhov and a rare instance of cross-season continuity referencing the Organian Peace Treaty established in Season 1. The teaser was written by Kuhn rather than Gerrold, and in Gerrold's words, was shorter and funnier than his. Some people complain that this type of episode, comedy for one, dialogue heavy for another, doesn't have any action other than the barroom brawl. For me, the action is in the movement. Kirk and Spock are constantly moving throughout the ship, back to the space station, to sickbay, and so on. And speaking of the barroom scene, Chekhov has great character bits. First, then great fight choreography, especially when he hits the Klingon multiple times in the stomach to no effect. There is a crewman in a Starfleet shirt from the Cage era who looks on with a grin as if to say, I'm just jazzed to be on the show, man. My least favorite scene is in sickbay between Spock and McCoy. It was also written by Gene L. Kuhn, and the two characters are just too nasty to each other. It also has Spock making a Bible quote, and he refers to an ermine violin. In the bridge scene where we see the Tribbles becoming out of control, we get some marvelous musical cues, including a theme which I'm pretty sure is played on an ermine violin. But the walking dog Tribble on the railing just looks wrong to me. Note how Shatner picks it up and has to shut it off before he speaks his dialogue, or its motor would have drowned out his words. Back in Mr. Lurie's office, there's a great bit of business where Kirk hands a Tribble to Spock, who hands it to Lurie. All this keeps the Tribble away from Darwin until late in the episode when it's important. And the look on Spock's face when he tells Cyrano it'll take 17.9 years to pick up every Tribble on the station is absolutely priceless. And my home puns of the episode, Kirk was leery of Lori, and if there were a future episode featuring a Federation bureaucrat to annoy Captain Kirk, we'll always have Barriss.
Okay. Very good. Thank you very much, Mark Zutkoff. All right, Carrie Schwent. What do you got on? You got a home pun too?
No, I do. I do have a limerick for the end, because
Right.
normally for TOS I do haikus, but for my Tribbles, hello Tribbles, I had to do a limerick, but I'll get to that at the end. Like Allison, I too fell down the memory alpha rabbit hole. This is the one TOS episode that I know well. The Tribbles are so cute. Just like Uhura, and if you put like a kitten or a kitten video or a picture of a kitten in front of me, I make the same noise that Uhura did the first time she saw a Tribble. And Tribbles are so cute, and they make the cutest noise, and they're so pretty. Anybody who's been by my cabin on the Star Trek cruise knows how many Tribbles I have all over my door. I actually won second place on the door decorating contest on the most recent cruise. Very proud of that. And I brought a prop actually from the cruise. A little fuzzy keychain like this was what inspired the Tribbles in the episode. And that keychain was owned apparently by the writer's girlfriend, whose last name was Sherman, and that's why you have Sherman's Planet. He named the planet after his girlfriend. And the scene where the Tribbles get dumped onto poor Kirk took 8 times to get right. The poor crew above that were dumping the Tribbles down couldn't see, so that's why random Tribbles just keep raining down on him periodically throughout the rest of that scene. And Shatner was the irritated look on Kirk's face is genuine, because by the end of 8 takes, he was genuinely annoyed by getting Tribbles dumped on him over and over and over again. The admiral apparently during one take on the blooper reel was tossed a Tribble, and his thing at the time was doing Allstate insurance commercials, and you've got the hands of the Allstate commercial holding out. He puts the Tribble in his hands, and where did I wrote it? I wrote it down. Where is it?
You're in good hands with Tribbles.
You're in good hands with Tribbles. Yeah, I read that. I laughed out loud. All of the guest stars were all great. One anecdote I found absolutely fascinating is Charlie Burrell. He at the time had a comedy duo team with him and his wife, and they had the distinction of following the Beatles on their first episode or first performance on the Ed Sullivan Show. They had to follow
Mitzi
the Beatles.
McCall.
Yeah, I love that name, Mitzi. And looking on his IMDb, I knew I recognized him from somewhere. He is the lieutenant on a fantastic crime drama from the 90s called Silk Stockings. My crush on Rob Estes dates back to that time, because my mom and I both crushed on him. And before I get to the limerick, I do have a question for things left unsaid, so don't let me forget about that. But poor Scotty, he just wants to hang out at home and read his book, but Dad's making him go outside and play. He just wants to sit at home and read. I mean, poor guy. That's when he gets grounded, he's happy as a clam. That means he gets to go back to his book. I could, as a bookworm back in my middle school and high school days, I could absolutely relate. And hold on, it's a little bit windy, so hopefully it doesn't blow away when I try to turn the page. But here is my Tribble limerick for the episode. We Tribbles are a cute and fluffy race. Our purr will bring a smile to your face. We come in many colors. Klingon see us and shudder. We multiply at quite a rapid pace.
Nice. Thank you very much, Carrie Schwent, a.k.a. Crafty Bear, on location. What do you got for us today, Chuck A., a.k.a. TNG Fanatic? You've been chiming in saying you basically know every line to this episode ever. You must love it.
Yeah, it's really no Tribble at all, right? Well, the first thing is, I got to see a lot of these actors at conventions, from the original series, because I've been going to conventions since the earlier mid 70s. I did see William Campbell at a convention in LA. Don't remember if I talked to him or not, but as he was signing autographs. The actor who played Mr. Lurie was actor's name was Whit Bissell. He was in a lot of early westerns, and he was also in the Time Tunnel with James Darren and Colbert. I can't think of his first name, but he was in the Time Tunnel. Lee Merriweather was also in the Time Tunnel.
Robert Colbert.
Robert Cole, thank you. And if you notice, Korath, the one that was lecturing Scotty about the garbage scow, Enterprise as a garbage scow, he was in the Next Generation episode Too Short a Season, first season episode. I think everything else in my notes has been mentioned, but the episode itself was, the episode itself was always my favorite episode. There's a handful of TOS episodes that are, my top 5 episodes, but I'd have to say the Trouble with Tribbles was my top favorite episode. It was as Melissa that mentioned, it was hard to watch the episode now and not think of Trials and Tribulations, seeing the characters in the background. Charlie Brill, as Arn Darvin, of course, made that appearance in Trials and Tribulations. He in the Trouble with Tribbles episode, that the look on his face when the Tribbles identified him as a Klingon was really, really good. As was mentioned, Spock had a bunch of one-liners, and it was kind of unusual for Spock to go onto the comedy side. But the Kirk and Spock and McCoy scenes were just wonderful. And Walter, of course, had probably his best scenes as Chekhov, and Scotty and Uhura also got so much to do in the episode. What a wonderful episode.
Great stuff. Thank you very much, Chuck. Number 1. Wow, that's amazing. All right. Up next, Faith Howell. She's floating outside the Enterprise. What do you think of this one?
This is definitely probably my top 2 TOS episodes for sure. I mean, what can I add that you guys haven't said? I definitely love that we get some interaction, human to human, with the Klingons. We see a lot of space fights and, view screen interaction, but to actually be in the same place at the same time and to see the crew interact with their crew was pretty cool. I want to say, Carrie, I love your background. I tried hard to find a background shot from the show like that. Could not find one. I feel like maybe DS9 would have it.
Okay. I think that's it. Thank you very much, Faith Howell. Appreciate it. Greg Kenzo's just hanging out, hanging loose in Hawaii. Looks beautiful over there. What'd you think of this episode?
Like everybody else, I loved it. There were a few things that I particularly loved. The Chekhov and Uhura scenes were amazing. It's interesting also to see that they did have a system of currency during the Tribble introduction scene where they were talking about credits. You think that the Federation is past currency and needing currency, but as we see a lot in DS9 and here, we do see that. But anyway, that's just like a little side note. Was that Kang and Koloth that we see?
Koloth was one, yeah.
The other guy wasn't Kang?
No, it was Koloth and
Korak.
Oh, okay. Because he looked like the actor that... And to get to that, I'll get to that DS9 crossover at the end. But yeah, I wanted to say I loved Walter's performance. He's heavily featured in this. I I'm not sure exactly what it is, but there's something in me that loves seeing the loyalty that Chekhov and Scotty show for. Chekhov with Captain Kirk and Scotty with the ship. The demonstration of the loyalty, it just tugs at my heartstrings. I don't know what it is, but it almost every time, yeah. This episode reminded me like there's a newer method of storytelling that happens. It's definitely more modern, but you tell the same story from multiple different perspectives, and this felt like that because we saw the DS9 version of Trouble with Tribbles, and they kind of go off on their own story, and then I see this, and I'm like, okay, this is what this crew was actually doing during that time. So yeah. This episode was great. It was full of well written and well executed comedy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, loved it.
And if anybody knows comedy, it's Hawaiians. Thank you very much, Greg Kenzo. Great stuff. All right. Friend McGee, or should I say Melon, because that is friend in Elvish or Dwarvish. I don't remember. Anyway, what do you got, Chris?
Well, what else can be said about one of the greatest Star Trek episodes ever produced? Of course, I love it and consider it a top 5 episode of the series, probably number 2 or 3. It has excellent comedy, good pacing, witty dialogue, acting and cinematography are well done, and even the music is on point and perfect for the episode. I think this episode has the most times Chekhov's history has been skewed toward Russia. Speaking of Chekhov, I like the little double take that he does when he realizes he's not drinking his vodka after Scotty hands him Freeman's drink. It's always a funny moment that I never noticed during my first few viewings. I've always wanted to see a re-edited version of this episode with the modified scenes from Trials and Tribulations. McCoy calls the Tribbles bisexual, which I don't think is the correct use of that term, but this was the 1960s, so I can forgive that. I think the proper term would be intersex or even hermaphroditic, but that's just me being pedantic. You had asked Melissa, by the way, Ryan, whether she laughed at said something on her second viewing that she didn't notice on her first viewing. Well, one thing I noticed this time around that I don't remember seeing before is when McCoy says to Kirk, I haven't figured out what keeps them alive yet. Kirk's glare at him is so absolutely priceless that I just busted out laughing. This is probably the most quotable episode in all of Star Trek, certainly in the original series. So it's tough to narrow it down to just one, but I finally found a good one, and that's McCoy saying, the nearest thing I can figure is that they're born pregnant, which seems to be quite a time saver.
Thank you very much, Dark Lord, a.k.a. Friend McGee. All right. Oh, we got a quick bonus thing. TJ, you've got something funny.
Okay, so yeah, Korax was played by Michael Pataki, so he's literally a Pataki.
Oh, no. Yeah.
Why didn't I think of that?
Yeah. Right when TJ said Pataki, I was like, oh, wait, I bet I know where he's thinking. Yeah, very good.
That's
very
good. Very good.
Jake's final take.
Klingon.
Any final thoughts, Sirach?
Yeah, I like Kirk saying a few lines. One of them was when he said, "You're running a nursery." I loved it. I thought it was hilarious.
Oh, yeah.
He also calls up for security and he says 2 and only 2. He kind of like, and I get more than that out of me. I love that line as well. And then the third Kirk line was, I don't want to interrupt this mutual admiration society that you guys got going on. Another great line. So those were Kirk's home runs for me. Also, let's see. Oh, I thought that the Tribble have better intuition than Troy. I mean, this Tribble can figure out the bad guy really easily. It takes Troy a whole. Like, we need Tribbles around, at least one, just to go as a lie detector around and find out who's cool or not. Let's see what else we got. Oh, Kyrie Irving is the best dribbler I know. So that's
Funny.
a good basketball show.
Double, triple.
There. Yeah.
That's funny.
20th Century Canada got a shout out, so I have to acknowledge that. I like that. And let's say we got some Star Trek nomenclature, a lot of it in this episode, actually more so than usual. We got the Regulon bloodworm. We had a Denibian slime devil and a ermine violin. So all this nomenclatures, I thought it was great. And then the last thing I'll say is this, and this I'm surprised I have not heard from anybody all of these years. And this is my theory. You ready for it? Here it is. The Tribble were beamed aboard the Klingon vessel. Is that correct? At the very end?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. So the last we see them is in the hands of the Klingon, essentially. Flash forward, when we do see the Klingon again in the Next Generation, they are all adorned in dressed in furs. So it is my theory that the Klingons took these Tribble and decided to make clothing out of them. So, sorry for the Tribble lovers, but it only seems logical. The Klingon popped back up. They look totally different, and they're wearing furs everywhere. So, I don't know.
Poor Tribbles.
That's Tribbles. Yeah.
Why do they only use the black Tribbles?
No, some of them have like
they have some gray
colored.
ones.
Yeah.
Really?
Well, we'll find out on Things Left Unsaid. Thank you very much to Greg Kenzo, Faith Howell, Friend McGee, Chuck A., Carrie Schwent, Mark Sutkoff, Allison Leach Hyde, TJ Jackson Bay out in Missouri, Jason M. Oken, Melissa Longo for myself, Sirach, Melissa, and of course, Mr. Aaron Eisenberg. Thank you all very much for hanging out with us. We will see you next time. And until then, always remember the 7th rule.